Hi, welcome to City Talk. I'm Michelle Bono, the assistant to the city manager. Well, summertime's here and it's time for sun and fun and relaxing. But if you work in the city's budget office, this is the time of the year when the budget comes in full focus. Now, if you're a taxpayer in the city of Tallahassee, I would say that you have a right, well, let's say you have an obligation to know how your tax dollars are being spent. And in the city of Tallahassee, we provide a number of opportunities for you to be involved in the budget process. On today's show, we're going to talk about what the budget year is looking like, what's the forecast, what are the options that we're looking at, and how you can be involved. Let's start by joining producer Gil Daspit to learn more about the city's budget process.
Some folks think of government budgeting as a challenging and stimulating exercise. Other folks can think of 1,000 things they'd find more interesting than government budgeting. But here, at the City of Tallahassee, we'd like citizens to take an interest in the city budget and give their thoughts on where to use city funds. So we have community budget meetings, and this year the goal was to make the meetings more lively and fun. The city delivers numerous services to residents. Some services are easy to identify: law enforcement, firefighting, public works, utility delivery. But the city provides many other services people depend on: code enforcement, a senior center, a city website, swimming pool facilities, fire inspections. The list of services is considerable. The city funds its various tasks through its budget, which is $685 million for the current fiscal year, which covers October 2012 through September 2013. So, how do we pay for those services? You might think through your property tax bill, but let's take a look. Your property taxes pay for services to Leon County, the school board, and there it is, the city. But the city is only 18% of the property taxes in city residents pay. In fact, the city doesn't even collect enough in property taxes to pay for the cost of the police department's budget. Another way we collect money to fund services is by having people pay for the services they receive. This can be trash collection, electric service, natural gas service, and fire services, where we all pay a monthly fee. This is also a way to ensure everyone pays their fair share. Since more than half of the properties in Tallahassee are tax exempt, places like state government, FSU, FAMU, and TCC, they don't pay property taxes, but they do pay for services like fire and utilities. And where private utilities return any profits to their shareholders, the city's utilities help support the services you receive, like police and public works and parks. There are a lot of other facts that you might not know about the budget. They tell you how our city works, and you can make a fun quiz game out of them, which is what they did at this year's community budget meetings. The game was a true or false quiz called Tally Twister. Here are a few of the questions. The Parks, Recreation, and Neighborhood Affairs Department, or PRNA, maintains a park system. Of course, true is the answer, but that was just a warm-up. Next question. The Growth Management Department's Quick Question Express Help Center issues permits on the spot. And the answer is true. Quick Question Express Help Center assists customers in the permitting process by answering questions and, in some cases, issuing permits for certain types of small projects on the spot. Next question. Public Works sweeps 5,000 miles of streets and parking lots annually. And the answer is false. The Public Works Department sweeps 10,350 miles of streets annually. Next question. The Tallahassee Fire Department has the largest non-hospital-based medical response force in North Florida. And the answer is true. With 7,400 EMS calls annually, TFD provides the largest non-hospital-based medical response force from Jacksonville to Pensacola. And there were many more questions that informed people how their city functions. Providing residents with services they want, delivering them at a high level, and funding this at an affordable cost is a complicated proposition. That's why the city allocates several months to developing the yearly budget and invites citizen input. Through user-friendly budget meetings and online budget resources, including a survey, and City Commission budget hearings, the city invites all residents to give their feedback about the budget. It's your chance to help the city make the best use of public funds while continuing to provide high-quality services.
Hi, welcome back to City Talk. On today's show, we're talking about the city budget. I know you may think, that's not all that interesting, but we have a guy here that makes the budget fun. It is my pleasure to introduce Heath Beach, who is our budget director. Welcome to the show.
Thank you, Michelle.
Now that I've set you up and already said that you got to make this budget interesting and fun, I just want you to know the gauntlet's been thrown down.
And challenge accepted.
Okay. Heath, let's start out. I know you've been with the city about 9 months. Tell us a little bit about your history and what brought you to Tallahassee, and just a little bit about your job.
Well, I have over 15 years of local government budget experience in Hillsborough County, as well as most recently in Jacksonville, Florida, where I was the assistant budget director.
Okay. And brought your family here because Tallahassee's obviously the best place to be in all the state of Florida.
Absolutely.
Okay. Just wanted to be sure we had you already indoctrinated. Okay. Well, tell us a little bit about who really gets involved with putting together the budget. Is it just the budget office?
No, absolutely not. The citizens are involved, the elected officials are involved, countless city staff are involved in putting the budget together. It is a team effort on the part of city staff, as well as collecting input from the citizens.
Now, I know people are going to say, okay, that's fine, but what difference can, citizens make? We're going to come back to that because I really do think that it's going to be surprising to some how much influence they have. But tell us first a little bit, you've worked in other Florida cities. What's kind of different about Tallahassee in terms of our structure and our makeup that influence the budget?
I think one of the biggest factors is the non-taxable properties that we have here in the city of Tallahassee. Specifically state buildings, universities, they do not pay property taxes.
So I guess in terms of property taxes, those of us who own property are paying it, all those guys are not paying it. So how do we fix that? Because if most homeowners are like, well, I don't mind paying my fair share, but I don't really want to pay for somebody else. How do we fix that in Tallahassee?
Well, what we do is we have a diversified revenue stream, specifically our enterprise funds.
Okay, now you got to explain that because I always think that's the Starship Enterprise. What is an enterprise fund?
Enterprise fund is just government speak for run the operations like a business. What's better than running it like a business, though, is that for us, we do not make a profit on it. We simply collect an amount of money to pay for the operations.
Now give me some examples. Let's talk about what some of those enterprises are.
The utilities are an enterprise fund, the electric, water, sewer, gas. Okay. They collect amount of revenue from the customers, and that goes back into the operations. Now, what's great about the enterprise funds is that even though the state buildings are not taxable and universities not taxable, they all pay utilities.
Okay.
And so therefore, we're able to take a little bit of money from the utilities into the general fund to help cover operations.
I know, in fact, we did the same thing with the fire services fee, where instead of just having the property owners pay for that through what we call the general fund, now everybody pays their fair share to pay for their fire services. So that makes sense. It's just kind of a way everybody pays their fair share.
Well, yes, it's a way for everyone to pay their fair share, and what's great about the city of Tallahassee, because we have so many diversified revenue streams, the decline in property values that hit all governments in Florida and across the United States, even though we were impacted by it, we weren't as adversely impacted as a lot of other cities who are still struggling through the worst recession since the Great Depression.
Because they were more reliant on property taxes to pay for their government.
Correct. The city of Tallahassee, roughly about 23% of the general fund comes from property taxes. In other governments, that could be anywhere from 40 to 50% of their general fund coming from property taxes.
Now, when you hear about the budget, this year's budget, or what we're looking at, is about how much money?
The total budget actually is about $680 million.
So when I hear that number, I'm like, dang, that's a lot of money. But in fact, about something like 70% of that is actually the enterprise. So it's paying for electric and gas and water and sewer.
Exactly. You know what's great about that is, unlike property taxes you get pretty much one shot a year as a citizen or a business owner to come in and express your opinions about the millage rate which sets the property taxes.
Okay.
On your utility bills, you get to determine how high you want to set your thermostat or how low you want to set it. And so you can adjust your bill almost daily on the utilities. So you're actually paying for what you use.
Well, that's what I try to tell my family when I'm like, it's summertime, set it at 78, and they fight me and bump it back down to 76. But you're right, we have more control over what we're paying when we're paying for those services because of how we consume those goods. That makes perfect sense. Now, you mentioned something, millage rate. I think for some folks, they may say, yeah, we all got it, but there are others that say, what is a millage rate? How does that work? Explain a little bit about the millage rate.
Well, the millage rate is something that the City Commission sets. They set it annually. And what they do is they base that off the taxable value. Now, the taxable value comes from a separate elected official called the property appraiser. It is his job and his responsibility to go out and look at the property on an annual basis and determine how much of that property is taxable. And we get a lot of discounts from the states. You get a lot of exemptions.
For being a veteran.
For being a veteran, some people, widows, disabled, and there are some exemptions which are automatic. They take that off of your real market value of your property, give you those exemptions, and that determines your taxable value. Once we see what that is as the City Commission then sets the millage rate to determine how much from property taxes to take in.
Now, I get that statement in the mail, and my property tax bill, but one of the things is a lot of times people just look at the bottom dollar and say, this is how much I'm paying. And if you live in the city, you might think that that's all going to the city. That is not the case.
It is not the case, and a lot of citizens think that. When they get their tax bill, one thing to keep in mind is that not only if you live in the city of Tallahassee, you're also a resident of Leon County. You're also paying into the school system. So depending on where you live, there are actually 5 other taxing authorities within Leon County. Of your tax bill, only about 18% of that comes to the city.
Wow. So if I got $1,000 that I'm paying in taxes, only 200 of that is going to come to the city of Tallahassee.
Just a little less, yes.
I don't think people think that. I think people just think that's my property tax bill. It's because I'm a city resident. So I think that's really helpful information. So I guess the message is, look at that bill.
Definitely look at that bill and get to know, because if you want to affect your tax bill, it's not just about coming to the city of Tallahassee. You need to go to the school board. You need to go to the county commission. There are a lot of people involved, and though we want people to get engaged in government at all levels.
Now, so we talk about that portion of the property taxes then goes to help support the general fund. And I know there's some other things that make up the general fund. What does the general fund pay for? What do I get from the money that's not in enterprise but is in the general fund?
The way that I like to sum up the general fund is it really pays for the quality of life, the health and the safety. The police are part of the general fund. No one can deny that that's a huge impact on the safety. Parks and recreation are in the general fund. There are several amenities throughout the city of Tallahassee, great amenities. Coming from other jurisdictions, I can tell you I loved all the amenities here. But the Parks and Rec are open to everyone to come out and enjoy. That's a huge quality of life indicator.
Well, and people in this community love the Parks and Recreation, and they also care about things like the roads and how well we keep the roads and those sorts of things as well.
Public Works, which maintains the roads and does the resurfacing, they are also part of the general fund and a big part of it as well.
Okay, and I just have to mention this because I always think about Public Works and the roads, but the other thing is those are the same crews that do all the landscaping, and we've got so many beautiful roadways and trees, and I think people appreciate, I always appreciate when I see those guys out there working and keeping those medians and those rights-of-way all looking great. They do a nice job with that.
Well, and they do, and it's also a safety factor as well, because the worst thing is to come up to an intersection that's overgrown and you can't see oncoming traffic.
Okay, now let me ask you one more question. When we talk about budget, the first thing people want to know is, well, that's fine, but it's been a tough economy. What has the city done to tighten its belt? I know at one point we said it's gotten down past skin and bones. We're down to the marrow. What have we done to cut back?
Historically, there's been several things that the city has done in order to reduce expenditures and thereby lessening the burden on the taxpayers. A lot of it has fallen on employees. We've actually eliminated positions. We've had furlough days, which is basically an unpaid day off. We've had employees contribute more to their health care. We continue to look at ways to save on debt service payments, which is because a lot of our projects we have to borrow money in advance, so we have to pay debt service just as if you were
Just
a household.
like a car loan.
A car loan, a mortgage, a credit card. So we look at trying to refinance those, as a lot of people have done with their own personal finances. So we save money in those regards.
And we talk about employees. The last time I looked, it was somewhere more than 200 jobs had been eliminated in city government. So it has definitely been a big cut there. So
doing more with less.
Okay. Well, I think we've gotten down to where we've perfected that quite well. Well, I appreciate, Heath, you being on this first part. When we come back, we're going to talk about how citizens have been engaged and the difference they've made in the process. So thank you very much.
Thank you.
And we do want you to know how you can make a difference. There's been a lot of opportunities already, but there are more to come. We'll tell you about them when we come back.
You know, you get much more than you think each time you pay your utility bill. Like improvements to our parks, neighborhoods, police force, and community. That's because the City of Tallahassee Utilities invests money back into Tallahassee to keep it clean, to keep it safe, to keep it yours. And we do it all for one reason. That's right, you. For more information, visit talgov.com.
Welcome back to City Talk. On today's show, we're talking about the city's budget, which actually will begin October 1st of this year. Joining us again is our budget manager, Heath Beach. And also joining us for this segment is Turquoise James, who is a management budget analyst, also working with Heath in the budget office. Welcome back to the show.
Thank you.
Now, Heath, before we start in talking about the citizen involvement, tell me a little bit about, I know you come and give briefings and meetings to the commission about what's the budget looking like. And actually, we've heard there are some challenges this year. Let's talk a little bit about those challenges.
Yes, once again, we face some challenges going into the budget. We've got some continued declining revenues as well as some increased expenditures. So there will be a shortfall that we're going to look to overcome. And right now, nothing's off the table in solving that problem, whether they be cuts in expenditures or trying to enhance some of the revenues that we have.
Now, when we talk about the economy, I'm actually feeling a little better. You know, it doesn't feel quite as bad as it has been. So if things are getting better, then why isn't the government seeing the same kind of, you know, hey, things are better, we're back to stable ground?
The economy is getting better, and you can see it. Unemployment's down. People are back spending a little bit more. But as we talked earlier in the first part of the segment, property taxes, even though they're not the only source of general fund revenue, they still are a big part. When the property taxes decline so rapidly, they just take longer to build back up. And because that, again, is one of our primary sources, there's going to be a lag before we finally see some recovery as a government.
Okay. Well, I know we've always worked to get citizens involved, and this year I know you recruited Turquoise and her cohort in your office at Nocton to come up with some really clever ways to engage citizens. So Turquoise, tell us a little bit about what did you guys do this year to get citizens involved in the budget?
Yes, Michelle, we really wanted to foster citizen engagement this year in an innovative and fun way. However, we wanted to keep the emphasis on informed feedback. So what we did was we provided a budget information packet to citizens ahead of time. That way they can go over the material, and it was really a snapshot of 11 areas that we chose through our city government, and just gave a bit of information on each of those areas.
Now, I know when I saw that packet of information, and Heath, I think that's the first time you guys had put that online. What was the goal of putting that online?
Well, as Turquoise said, it was really, we always want citizen input into the budget process. We're here to provide, as I've said before, health, safety, and quality of life for the citizens as determined by the citizens. But what we wanted to do is we wanted to make sure they understood what they were being provided, all the different services. So yes, it was the first time we've done something like that because we wanted to get informed feedback. A lot of people are passionate about one area. You got people who love parks, you got people who love police. But what we wanted to show them is that there's all these services that we do, hundreds of services.
Okay, but Turquoise, the really fun part was not just reading all that. When we got there, you guys introduced the Tally Twister.
Right.
Tell me about this game.
Right, we introduced the Tally Twister as well as electronic polling. But the Tally Twister was just a fun way for citizens to engage with our city leaders. It had a true-false quiz question-like format, and citizens were asked questions ranging from related to Parks and Rec, to Star Metro, to Public Works, and they were able to engage. Not only was it informative, but it also became intense at times because we found out that our citizens are very competitive.
I got to be one of the moderators for a group, and just like Twister, you spun the little dial, and when it landed on a topic of, say, Public Works, we would ask a true-false question. I want to give you a second to ask you to share a couple of those with us, but you're absolutely right about the competitiveness because they were also winning some discount cards that have been donated from Harry's downtown, and people were pretty vicious about wanting to be sure they got that right. Share a couple of examples of some of the kinds of questions we asked.
Some of the questions that were overwhelmingly surprising was that some of the amenities that we provide, for instance, Public Works sweeps over 10,000 miles of roads each year. And I think citizens did not understand the magnitude and the impact on that on our community and how it really enhances our community.
Okay.
Other things that they were surprised about the Parks and Rec department. They did not realize the amount of services Parks and Rec provides, playgrounds and parks that we maintain.
Okay, give me some numbers. I like some of those numbers.
Okay, great. For instance, the Parks and Rec offers over 20 youth and adult sports. Okay. That was something that citizens did not know.
Yeah, most of us think soccer, t-ball,
right.
That's about it. No,
Right, there are a lot of golf, tennis, there's
volleyball.
A lot of
just because I love volleyball. Okay.
Yes.
The other thing that I think was surprising is we talked on the first part of the show about the portion of your tax bill that really is city, that you pay to the city. I think there was a lot of people surprised with that. So any other things that came to mind to you, Heath, that people said, wow, I just didn't know that?
Well, I think back to what Turquoise was saying, it's not just the number of services, but what's really behind that. The number of calls that police get a year, the number of acres that parks actually maintains. It's not just enough to have a park. You've got to have people out there mowing it and maintaining the equipment out there. And the same thing with street sweeping. 10,000 miles of street sweeping.
It's a lot of miles.
It's unfortunate, but litter gets out there in the streets, and then just dirt, overfill, and you got to keep the streets clean. You got to keep the drainage ditch clean. So it's a lot of work. I mean, people were surprised about that. I think the 18% of your tax bill only coming to the city, people were surprised about that.
Okay, now go ahead.
I was going to say, and 55% of property in the city of Tallahassee being non-taxable. People were surprised about that.
Gotcha. Now, one of the parts I loved was that we asked we had a number of different meetings, and at each meeting, people had handheld devices that they could vote anonymously, so nobody knew what you were voting, on a number of issues. What kind of feedback did you hear, Turquoise, from people in terms of that part of the process?
They loved that. It was an opportunity to have live polling and for others to see what our community thinks. They were able to give us their priorities on certain areas that we touched on in the game. And for example, it was, do you want more of, or are you content with just the same? And it was overwhelming that the citizens are very content, but they want more and they're willing to pay more for additional amenities.
It was the instant gratification of seeing not only how you voted, but how it compared to how other people voted. And I think, combined with the packet of information that we gave out ahead of time, there was a brief presentation involved, the tally twister game, and then we did the voting. What you saw is that people really had informed feedback. They understood where the money was coming from, they understood where it went, and really a majority, they wanted more services, and in some cases, people are willing to pay for them.
That was one of the things that surprised me too, was that overwhelmingly the things that people really wanted, they said that's important enough to me that I would pay more. Almost the majority, almost on all the ones where people felt really passionate. So.
Yes.
The other thing I thought was nice too is you offered it online so people could answer it online, which was nice as well. Now, what do you do with all that? You have this feedback. What's the next steps?
Well, just like last year, because we did something similar, we had community budget workshops. We also did online polling last year. And we take that feedback and we take it seriously as we put together the budget. The city manager will prepare her balanced budget for the city commission. And just like last year, there were several items. At that time last year, people were not willing to raise the millage rate.
Right.
We heard that, we listened to that. The millage rate was kept flat. There was also community gardens people wanted to support.
Oh, they really wanted community gardens.
We heard that and we provided funding for that.
Okay.
So just like last year, what we're going to do this year is we're going to, once all that polling is closed online, we're going to take all the data, pull it together, and we're going to present it to the City Commission and let them know what we see the citizen priorities being,
okay,
and make sure that we develop a budget around that.
Okay. Now, let's talk just real quickly about the options. One of the things that I think people may hear that's a little confusing is this discussion about a rollback rate. We've not done that, but tell us a little bit about what's a rollback rate?
The rollback rate is simply bringing in the same amount of property tax revenue as you did the prior year. And they call it the rollback rate because they think you're going to adjust the millage rate down. What happened though during the decline of the economy is that in order to take in the same amount of revenue as the prior year, you actually had to adjust the millage rate up.
Okay.
But technically it's called the rollback rate, and it is an option that we will consider as we develop the budget.
Well, I knew when the county did that last year, I was trying to understand, okay, what does that mean? But I think that helps explain it. So thank you for doing that. Tell us real quickly in the last few seconds, what is the time frame? When does the commission have to vote on a budget, and what will happen over the summer?
Oh, the next steps are to have budget workshops with the City Commission so they can understand what the key assumptions are in the budget. As I said, the city manager prepares her proposed budget, and it's balanced. By state law, we have to have a balanced budget.
Right.
Revenues have to meet expenditures. We'll have, like I said, some City Commission budget workshops. We'll get some more feedback from their priorities. We'll talk about the citizen priorities. Later on in September, the City Commission will have to vote on a balanced budget, which will take effect in October.
Okay, and two public hearings before that happens as well.
You're right. Two public hearings.
All righty. Well, thank you both. Turquoise, I can tell you the feedback we heard from citizens this year was this was the best budget session ever, not just because it was fun, because I think you guys are right. People walked away having a much better understanding, and that was really the goal. So kudos to you and the entire budget team for getting that done.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And to our viewers, we want to remind you that we always want to know your input. You can find the entire budget online on talgov.com. Maybe not the most exciting reading, because if you want to read that whole budget, it is pretty thick, but it's all right there for you to see. We also have a checkbook function where you can see on a day-to-day, how's the city spending its money. You can check any avenue and see how we're spending money, and we also give you all the details about what's going to be proposed, so you also can have one more opportunity for feedback. As always, we thank you for watching this show and for being an active part of the City of Tallahassee.
No one thinks this will ever happen to them, but it can. And in a heartbeat, everything can be lost. Your family needs an escape plan, needs to practice that plan, and if the time comes, needs to quickly get out of the house and stay out. Smoke detectors are essential. So is education. For more life-saving tips, it's talgov.com/fire. Your Tallahassee Fire Department.
For every pound you lose, that's 4 pounds of pressure off the knees. To find out more, go to fightarthritispain.org.